Hey, what's going on, fellow trade geniuses? This is Philip, and I wanted to kind of go over the outlook for the week and see what's setting up. So, ES has made new on the futures has made new highs, and so what we're kind of getting into some levels that don't really have any volume to reference. This is a 4-hour chart. Okay, so let's zoom out here and take a look. So as you can see, this point here on the 2390 level, we've got, it's that's where I think you have this, broke up above that, and that's kind of like this section of volume here that we have. Then we have below that, we have this level here at about 2378. Okay, so that's 2378 is here. Okay, so that's another level to watch if we come back down. Then we have a little bit of action here at the 2370 level, but really then we would just drop. To me, it would indicate we're dropping through this gap here. So okay, we have this gap here. That was that gap up on that over that weekend, and then into here at this level here. So, and that's about the 2350 area. Okay, so if we break through this level, I think that brings this lower trend line into play first, and we may get a bounce up, but I think ultimately we close this gap. Now it could be that this just kind of putters along and this lower trend line actually ends up coinciding with this gap fill, which I think would gap fills always fill. I mean, it's like, think of like a toilet bowl flushing. It's just, you can hear the sucking sound. So I expect this to fill. I don't expect this to just keep running up without some sort of good sized correction down. And we'll get into some of the elements in play about that. But and so that would be so 2356, I think 2379, 2380. I think if we break through this 2390 level, that's going to be your first stop, and then we're going to look at 2356 or so as another stop, depending if this comes down soon enough. Otherwise, it might coincide with this 23 area here, this 2347 area. And so if that fails, then we're looking at 2332 area. To me, this is an area where we start peekabooing, start peekabooing below that, and it gets saved pretty quick. And the reason why is because as you can see here, there's just a volume gap right inside here, this whole area. Okay, just a big volume gap. So that's why we're taking it down to this whole area here would take us down to 2294. All right, and I think that would be somewhat of a long-term bottom, I think, but this gap, okay, this gap here and this volume void here are two things I think that are pulling on this. And when this thing starts to go, I think gap fill first. I think we get a decent bounce off of that, but I do ultimately think that this volume void in this area gets filled, and I think 2294, I would be bullish at that point for a bit. But a lot of people thought that 2400, the highs were in for now, but they're not letting it go yet. But it's close. I know that that's been a narrative for a long time, is that we're close, it's near, but we're going to go over some things I'm going to show you as to why I think that is. Okay, so that's kind of the ES on the outlook. So for this week, what's going to happen? We've got divergences here. Oops, let's get rid of that. We got some divergences here, especially on this oscillator. This is actually going down this way, and we are going up. So when I see that, I see a new high and it's lower. To me, that's not something that makes me very bullish. If this does turn up and makes another high with that, then that would kind of void that out. So that has me a little suspicious. And then these levels here, 2390, 2380, are key levels I think this week to watch. Anything in between that's just really noise. So let's take a look now at the mechanics of kind of what's been going on and how money's been funneling into keeping this up. Okay, so if you look, what's been happening with regularity is we're getting this USD JPY ramp action, and what that is you guys have heard of the yen carry trade. So they're devaluing the yen, using that to buy up the ES. And basically what the ES has turned into is just funneling money into very few high cap stocks, the FANG stocks, Facebook, Apple, those stocks. So it's not a healthy market, even though we're getting boosted like this. So now if you look today, we went from 112.46 on up to 113, almost 100 pips. And what did we get for it today? Well, if you're looking from settlement to settlement, we actually dropped. Friday settlement was 23.97 and today's settlement was 23.95. So we had this gap down from the open last night. The French elections kind of went per plan, I think, with Le Pen not getting voted in, and so some of that was, obviously it was priced in. So this dropped and never really recovered that gap up high. But as you can see, this ramp, what did it produce? Not a whole lot. I mean, there's just not a lot of movement here. We bottomed out during the day at 23.89. And what time was that? It was about 2 o'clock. So if we look here, they started ramping it early in the morning. 2 o'clock was here. They continued to ramp it into 4, and there just wasn't a lot to show for it. Usually these ramps, this type of move, you see a move like like this here, but they're getting diminishing returns on this yen devaluation that they use to pile into here. Okay, so that's one thing to look at. The other thing is the VIX smash down, and that's getting pretty ridiculous too. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so let's look at the VIX. So here's the low we got here, 977-ish. Okay, and then let's look. So this takes us back to the only time it was lower was here in November 2007. Yep. And as you know, 07 was like, that was the bottom, and then we never saw volatility return to those levels for, well, till now. So that was before the crash. So crazy VIX levels here. That's one thing that they've been doing, though. If we look at let's take a look at let's see, 15, let's go 90 days, 1 hour. All right, so we take a look at the VIX. It seems like a lot of times, and not always, but a lot of times as we get into 9:30, 10 o'clock, we'll get this influx where the VIX just gets hammered. There's just, every day it just seems like there's just like it hammers on it. Here's 9:30, 10 o'clock, hammered. We can get a little more granular here. We can go through and look. So 9:30 red kind of stays down. So every time the market opens, even if it gaps up, it's like it just ends up getting hammered back down. Gaps up here, and they press on it. Very few days are where you have a sustained VIX that rises. Otherwise, it's right around the market open, and it just gets hit. Some days it's a little later in the day, but every day, just about, it gets whacked. So here you have a gap up, and usually by 11, 12 o'clock at the latest, they step on it. But nothing, the stuff jumps up. Here we had a big spike down below 10, but nothing really stays sustained right now in the VIX. It's just they squash it. And what ends up happening is when they do this, there are funds called risk parity funds, and they're rule based. And so if VIX is being squashed like this, then they counterbalance that action by buying into the large cap names, the FANG stocks. So that's why we're having a high concentration of a very small amount of stocks keeping up the whole S&P. Transports are weak. The Russell's very weak. The advanced decline today was negative. So it's like there's a total disconnect between the broad market representation of where the S&P is at and what's reality under the hood. So it's important to know that the VIX smash, they count on that. They count on the UJ ramping, and they might even maybe spread that to other USD crosses like the USD Swissy. I noticed today broke out of its range, which was for the last 2-3 weeks was kind of going sideways, and then it broke out today. So it's just things to be aware of on the mechanics of that. But currently, that's what's going on. Other side effects of that, it seems to be that oil kind of takes it on the chin when this happens, and so if we look at our chart for correlation to the other forex volatility indices, so this is you can see they're all kind of dropping, and that's a low VIX environment right now. So, and everybody's kind of like into that low VIX environment right now. So basically what we are seeing is that the moves, this is a completely different forex market than it was last year. The moves, a lot of times you'll see a very I want to say like it's like the algos just take the currency for a walk, and it's a lot of little bars that just kind of go up, and then they'll plateau and they'll come back down. Not all the currencies, but you see that behavior a lot, and I've been seeing it every time we get below 13 on the VIX. I see that behavior. So it's tricky to do like a high probability entry where you're in the money and you're risking a little, or you're risking a lot to make a little, because it's just that environment makes that a difficult trade to put on. So that's why we look for more at the money or weekly at the money entries with the binaries right now, because that's going to make our risk reward a lot more feasible in this environment. Okay, so on the plus side, as you know, we don't like it when our VIX is below the other FX, Forex volatility indices, but as you can see, they were all kind of starting to congregate around together. So it's not too, we may have some setups is what I'm getting at, but when you run into the situations like I've mentioned before where you're down here and all of them are up here, that makes the premiums a bit tough, and then really all you can do is look at the money stuff, because they can't really squash that, but in the money stuff they can. Okay, so that's kind of where we're at with the VIX, and let's take a look at the currencies on the whole. Okay, so basically what we have here is these are this chart. Every other one is my wider low VIX channel. So that's the ones I key in. Normally on a higher VIX channel, I would be keying in on this to fade this here, but low VIX tends to respect these levels more here. So we may see a setup on EG later if we can get down to this 8400 level. AJ, I'd like to see it up here at this 8460 strike. EJ, it needs to get it needs to make an expansive move. Euro USD, my view on that this week is down. I think we're due for a pullback on it, and we are in the weekly on that. It's an OTM weekly, and so basically what we're doing is looking at, let's take a look at that. So we're looking at the 80.0825 strike, which is down here ish. If we zoom out, so I'm expecting this to break down here, and so we're gonna have these various levels of support, but I think ultimately once we break down below this 0870 4 or 5 level, I think then getting down to 0825, which I believe is our weekly strike that we're OTM on, I think that'll get there this week. But I think there'll be plenty of opportunity if this is rolling over the way I think it is. We'll be able to make some money on that weekly strike. That'll just kind of be a slow motion trade as it appreciates as it gets closer to the strike. So don't really have UJ. Might see if we get up here in the 114s, that's going to get really extended I think for UJ on this leg up. I think it's due for a wave down, but you know, it just seems like they do not want the SPX to fall. Just whatever's going on, they have to keep it pinned sideways, seems like. So I don't know, but we've gone up a lot and it's getting diminishing returns, I think. So you know, to me the UJ is just getting ramped relative to the SPX. I mean, that's just where we're at. It's kind of ridiculous, but that's where we're at. The other one to take a look at is USD Swissy. So we took that short, but now this is what I mean kind of when we see these bot walks, and the reason why I took it was because we were getting near the low VIX channel, weren't quite there yet, so it took a little bit of an aggressive entry. 1000 would have been preferable, but I didn't like the premium. I wanted more of an at the money premium, so it did overshoot this channel, and but just now it's going sideways. So that's what I'm talking about when you get these bot walks up and then it goes sideways. And so let's take a look at that. So yeah, you're just kind of grinding higher, grinding higher. This is on a 15-minute. If you go to an hourly, is a lot of times the way I like to view these, and as you can see what happens, this is the kind of action I'm talking about in a low VIX environment. You get short hourly bars, and they kind of, you don't really get any too much of a pullback really, and it goes up and then it'll go sideways, and then typically they'll tabletop and then roll over. That's been pound dollar's done that time and time again. Here's an example of that here. Come up, tabletop, roll over. And I've been seeing a lot of that tabletop stuff in the low VIX environment. So something to note. So that's kind of the currency view at the moment. Oh, let's take a look at our dailies. So here is our magic channel, and that's another thing to look at too with regards to you know, the highs that we're making. This is a 15-minute chart, so you know, we gapped up, we came down, and so all of that ramping you saw in the UJ, you know, didn't really get us much here. So I would be looking at, if this thing attacked 2400 again in this area tomorrow or overnight, I'd probably be looking at, you know, fading that, and or vice versa down here at this level here. So we'll be looking for a play either up here 2400, which I'm okay with because I just think that I don't think we're going. I just don't see us rocketing relative to what the internals are doing, just rocketing higher. So I think we might go a little bit higher, but I think fading those levels, I think will probably pay out okay. And then buying, unless it's like a violent move down, I think buying the bottom, the dips on this channel, as you can see, works out. Okay, so that's that. Oil has been taking it on the chin. let's go. Yeah, so this is a 1 hour chart, and it looks like this could be a bottom here. So we got a nice bottom here, and it's kind of heads and shouldery action here. There's your happy face for you, but that needs to hold. I think this level here needs to hold. This for just under around 45.70ish level, that needs to hold, and I would expect it to go up to that trend line that's above, and that's really on the other chart, CL. So I think we move up to this level up here. I think that's what we do. I think that's where we're going. But again, I think if you look at when the UJ ramps and oil, it correlates negatively for oil. And one explanation thrown out there is exporting inflation. I tend to buy into that. That's not an original theory I came up with, but I tend to buy into that. At the same time, I know some big players that have major oil positions, like in the $200 million range, and they're looking, their horizon's longer, but they're looking at, this is just way too overdone, and they're looking for oil to get back into the 50s, even possibly to the 60s before the year is over. Yet on the other side, you've got people that are saying, well, we got a supply gut. So there's a little bit of there's a war of fundamentals, I think, but a lot of the big oil traders are thinking that ultimately it's going higher for the rest of the year. As far as the technicals go, I think that once we do clear, if we clear this trend line, then boom, I think we go back. Take a look at, let's go to the 4-hour chart and kind of look at some volume. Let's go like this. Okay, so these are some trend lines that were in play until it broke. But this upper trend line, this one held that line and then it broke down. So I think you got to break through this first. This has to get broken through, and that might resist, and then ultimately that to, now we're at about $49 is what we're looking at, and there's a lot of volume, as you can see here. That's almost like a hidden pivot, so a little over $49, and then I think once that breaks through, then we're free to test this level here, basically 54. I do think that's in the cards, but this is a key level to hold. If this breaks down, I'm going to go out on a limb and say if this level breaks, I think that's going to be the final low. Although I do think that this is it. I think the low's in. But if this were to get tested again or break lower, I think that's it. I really do, and I think we're higher for the remainder of the year. I'll go out on a limb and say that. We'll see what shakes out. Okay, so that's basically it for the charts and the weekly outlook. Let's take a look at some news real quick, and then we'll wrap it up. Okay, so we had our French elections, kind of a non-event, coming down into Wednesdays where we're going to have some action here. Draghi speaks, so probably not going to hold anything into that meeting or that press conference. We have our crude oil inventories, so it'll be interesting to see how crude reacts to that. On Thursday, we've got Bank of England, so we've got some pound related stuff, so we need to be wary of that going into Thursday morning. PPI also Thursday morning, and then Friday we've got CPI and retail sales. But and then we got, let's see, FOM speaker Friday 12:30. Our week's usually probably wrapped up by then, so that really shouldn't affect us. And Dudley speaks in the morning Thursday. What'll be interesting to see is if they talk about overheating, and what I mean by that, or what I think they mean by that, is really the stock market. GDP is crashing, but I think it just seems to me that they're worried about a disorderly unwind in the market. Like there's so much being propped up here that something not much is going to take to really just crater this thing. So when you start hearing them say, market's overheating, which has been a key word, I like to count how many times that gets uttered by these guys, because I think they're trying to get the market to simmer down, but it's not reacting. So it's almost like the algos are kind of just ignoring those statements. So not much from those guys this week. So not a very data heavy week, but we do have the Bank of England. They're going to be out on Thursday morning, so we don't want to hold anything into that. And also Wednesday morning, Draghi speaking. So we'll see what they say. We'll see what the story goes. And that'll probably affect our euro and pound pairs. So we'll see. All right, guys. Well, that's about it for now. So we'll be looking for some at the money entries unless we get some pricing that comes in on the premiums for the binary side that changes that. We also have some other signals that we're working on. So in the advanced room, we'll be calling that stuff out, room trades for those. But we'll keep the looks like we'll be at the money type trades or out of the money type trades, low risk, high reward until this fixing environment improves. So with that, wish you guys good trading this week, and I will catch you in the next video. Take care.